Welcome everyone. So Center for the Study of Genocide and Justice, Liberation War Museum is welcoming you to its public lecture on Bangabandhu and his struggle to establish justice for genocide victims. So as for this lecture, we do have Mr. Mofidul Hoque, Director, Center for the Study of Genocide and Justice, and Trustee, Liberation War Museum as the speaker. So we would be starting this public lecture, and you can see it through the Zoom platform and also through the Facebook page of Liberation War Museum, and also from Center for the Study of Genocide and Justice page on live. So without any further ado, I request Mofidul Hoque sir to deliver his lecture. Sir.
Thank you, Naureen. Welcome everybody, the participants of the 7th certificate course, and also those from home and especially abroad who have been linked to this public lecture, some of our old friends, and also we are very happy to have such a galaxy of participants in this lecture. As has been explained by Naureen, today we will focus on Bangabandhu and his struggle to establish justice for genocide victims. This is the month of August, a very sad occasion for our nation. And tomorrow on 15th August, on that day, early in the morning in 1975, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, architect of the Bangladesh nation and state, was brutally murdered along with his family members at his home. And this is murder most foul. And this has a greater link with many of the events or the values that he wanted to highlight, or events that he was architect of those and he wanted to promote. And also, it is not surprising that the trial of the war criminals was also one of the reasons that why so much hatred a certain group has generated against him and how so brutally he was killed. But his spirit lives on, his legacy is inspiring the nation. And before this public lecture, we all pay tribute to his memory, to his contribution. And with that, I begin to read out my submission, but I would like more to be this session to be interactive, because it is very difficult to highlight his role to ensure justice for genocidal crime in 30 minutes. In one of my lecture in 2015, I actually termed his contribution as one man's crusade against the world for justice. It was a very different world at that time, and also he took a very strong position with his commitment and his guidance. So I will read out, and then I think Naureen will conduct the question and answer session, and we will also encourage input from other participants. We all know about the history of Bangladesh, which emerged as an independent state on 16 December 1971. After a 9-month-long war of independence sparked off by the brutal attack launched on 25th March 1971 against the Bengali population. And this is almost like the Rwandan genocide, which started on a particular day and ended on a particular day. And this is also the case of Bangladesh. Right from the beginning, the targeted killing of members of different groups betrayed the intent to destroy, either in whole or in part, which soon culminated in one of the worst genocides of the 20th century. The attack was launched against the Bengali national group, Hindu religious group, Awami League political group. The beginning and end of the atrocity was marked by extreme brutality against the class of intellectuals. The attack against civilian population was widespread and systematic. The Bengali women became large-scale victim of rape, which has been used as a weapon of war to subjugate the Bengali nation. What happened in Bangladesh in 1971 is a classic case of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. The atrocities were recorded and noted by journalists and eyewitnesses. Victims testimonies, especially of those at the refugee camps, were widely collected and disseminated. Congressional records, parliamentary debates have recognized many of the such records and statements. Diplomats, aid workers, academics provided many important eyewitness accounts. The war correspondents, seasoned by their coverage of war in Vietnam, did laudable job in covering Bangladesh war both in the print and electronic media. Bangladesh genocide happened before the eyes of all. It was one of the widely reported acts of brutality and moved the conscience of the world. The movement in solidarity with the struggling people of Bangladesh was also great. Bangladesh became a household name in 1971, and in all the major cities of the world, there were demonstrations, vigils, acts of protest against the perpetrators of atrocity and their supporters. Now we can take stock of the situation on the ground. The struggle, suffering, resistance, and resilience of Bengali people who, under the leadership of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, democratically challenged the colonial authority of Pakistan. Sheikh Mujib, in his famous speech on 7th March 1971, launched the non-violent, non-cooperation movement, and that turned overnight into the armed resistance of the people. Finally, with the assistance of Indian Army, Bangladesh won its independence, paying a high price for freedom. Bangabandhu, undisputed leader of the Bengali people, was in Pakistani prison and made a triumphant return to his Sonar Bangla on 10th January 1972. From the airport, he went to the Sarwardi Park to address the mammoth gathering. In emotion-choked voice, he referred to the atrocities and made an appeal to the UN to send a team of investigators and arrange the trial of the perpetrators of atrocity crimes. But unfortunately, the international community was not prepared for that. After the Nuremberg and Tokyo trial of the war criminals and subsequent adoption of the Genocide Convention in 1948, the world community was in limbo, and no progress has been made to frame appropriate legal instrument and relevant institution to confront genocide, as the convention has called for. There was also no civil society organizations like Genocide Watch, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, or for that matter, International Association of Genocide Scholars, to take a deeper look into Bangladesh genocide and propagate their findings. Many years later, Leo Cooper, in his book Genocide, Its Political Use in the 20th Century, wrote, quote, "The massacres starting in March 1971 took place under the full gaze of the outside world, with observer reports and charges of genocide filtering through the world press. Yet, a United Nations General Assembly and Security Council were only seized of the matter, and then from a quite different aspect in December 1971, following the escalating of the conflict between India and Pakistan. This was the global scenario, and nationally, it was different and complicated. As Bangladesh was born out of blood and fire, the death amounted to millions, 3 million to quote the official figure, which, as genocide scholar Adam Jones has put, has not been proven but not improbable. Especially so if you take into account the deaths in the refugee camps. The country was devastated, infrastructure destroyed, the famine and shortfall in rice production posing existential threat. The foreign exchange reserve was nil. In fact, the state had no exchangeable currency of its own. The major challenge before Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was to rebuild the country from scratch. At the same time, what he had done in the aftermath of genocide requires special attention. Here we could like to draw attention to few salient features of the measures undertaken by his government. These are: one, recognition of the victims with reparation and memorialization. Many of the martyr family received a personal letter of condolence from the Prime Minister Sheikh Mujibur Rahman with a token amount of Taka 1000 or 2000 only. 2. Recognition of the victims of sexual violence as Birangana or war heroine and establishment of rehabilitation center for the destitute victims. Call for social acceptance of the Birangana and support their inclusion in the mainstream society. Also, by an office order, the administration allowed adoption of war babies in the third country and made abortion legal up to a certain time, certain date. 3. Adoption of two laws for the trial of local and Pakistani perpetrators accused of international crimes. The acts are Bangladesh Collaborators Special Tribunal Order 1972 and International Crimes Tribunal Act 1973. 4. High priority given to justice issue and make that part of prisoner of war repatriation negotiation. Finally, the identification of 195 Pakistani prisoner of war as war criminals and detach the issue of trial from the return of the prisoner of wars. 5. Reform of the state and society as expressed in the Constitution of 1972, embodying values of harmony, tolerance, pluralism, and inclusiveness. These are all related with what we in today's term call transitional justice, which evolved in the 1990s, but what Bangabandhu has done in the 70s reflects the same spirit of transitional justice. Regarding the trial of local collaborators and Pakistani perpetrators of mass atrocity crimes, Bangladesh holds the high moral ground to ensure justice for the genocide victims. But its implementation was not easy. The number of cases in case of local collaborators were very high and judiciary was not ready to handle those. There was also incidents of case filed for petty offences as well as with intent of harassment. On November 1973, the government issued a general amnesty order which applied to all perpetrators except those who are charged with murder, rape, or arson. On the contrary, the trial of the major Pakistani perpetrators was not easy, as the international community was not supportive of such action. With the surrender of 96,000 Pakistani soldiers and their auxiliary forces, including leading members of the Eastern Command, to the joint forces of Bangladesh and India, the government of Bangladesh apparently was in a better position as they have the authority over the accused. But the trial had to be held under international law following the international practice. There was no precedence of such international court or any legal instrument explaining procedural rules. The Nuremberg and Tokyo Tribunal was the major source providing legal direction, but those were military tribunals formed on ad hoc basis. Either Bangladesh or the international community had to formulate new law to address the new challenge. The international community met the challenge ultimately with the drafting of the Rome Statute in 1998 and its adoption in 2002, followed by the establishment of International Criminal Court. Prior to that, the genocide in former Yugoslavia and Rwanda led the global community to set up ad hoc tribunals in 1991 and 92 respectively. The trial for the genocide in Cambodia also faced similar fate like Bangladesh, and it has to wait for more than 30 years to initiate the extraordinary chamber in the court of Cambodia. While evaluating or criticizing the ICTBD Act 1973 of Bangladesh, one must not forget its context. We also have to remember that standing tall on the blood-soaked soil of Bangladesh, with devastation all around him, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib, within 2 weeks of his return from Pakistani captivity, enacted as a presidential order the Bangladesh Collaborators Order on 24 January 1972. This showed Bangabandhu's adherence to the rule of law, which was so blatantly violated by Pakistani rulers during the carnage of 9 months. Now we would like to draw attention to the International Crimes Tribunal Act adopted by the newly constituted Jatiya Sanshad or Parliament of Bangladesh on July 1973. The journey of Bangladesh to arrive at the Act and its subsequent implementation 37 years later is a story by itself and need deeper study to understand national and international strengths and weaknesses in confronting genocide. Bangladesh was in a strong position with respect to the Pakistani POWs held under the joint custody of India and Bangladesh. But Bangladesh was in a weak position as Pakistan did not recognize the country as a sovereign state, although about 100 countries of the world extended their recognition. Pakistan got strong support from China and most of the Arab countries. People's Republic of China newly got their seat at the United Nations and the Security Council was a powerful ally of Pakistan. When the issue of Bangladesh's entry into the UN came, China exercised its veto power, the first veto it has exercised at the UN, to stop the inclusion of Bangladesh in the community of nations. This had serious implications for Bangladesh, aspiring to meet the challenge of rehabilitation and rebuilding the devastated country. Strong pressure was put on Bangladesh to release the prisoner of wars unconditionally, including 195 accused of war crimes. To counter the move toward justice, President of Pakistan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, interned about 400,000 Bengali civilians working in Pakistan and sent many of the civil and military officers to the internment camps. The situation has a similarity with the Japanese-American interns in the USA during the World War II. Pakistani acts of civilian internment was gross violation of international law, but there was no condemnation of President Bhutto's such move. At the same time, developments were going on in the backdrop with overt and covert diplomatic moves. Pakistani President Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi met at a summit held in Shimla on 2nd July 1972 to settle immediate issues like the line of control in Kashmir. The prisoner of war issue was deferred to be decided in consultation with Bangladesh. At the same time, International Commission of Jurists came up with their legal study titled The Events in East Pakistan 1971. This is the first comprehensive study of the 9-month-long war analyzed from the perspective of international humanitarian law. The report made significant observations, including the recognition of acts of genocide and suggesting steps to be taken to ensure justice for such crimes. The report concluded that there is a strong prima facie case that criminal offenses were committed in international law, including acts of genocide. It further noted that if Bangladesh government are to put on trial senior Pakistani officers and civilians, they should set up an international court for the purpose with a majority of judges from neutral countries. The report did not find any resonance in the concerned quarters, but it contributed in getting United Nations Secretary General Office involved with behind-the-scene diplomacy to break the stalemate on repatriation of prisoners of war and Bangladeshi interns in Pakistan, as well as the fate of stranded Pakistanis in Bangladesh. In April 1973, at a Indo-Bangla meeting, it was decided that all prisoners of war will be repatriated except those required by Bangladesh for trial for criminal charges. This logical position and adherence to the international humanitarian law was endorsed by the UN envoys engaged in extensive negotiation. The notes of such discussion are available now at the UN archive in New York, although a few of the documents still remain classified. Dr. Ashfaq Hussain, professor of Department of History of Dhaka University, has retrieved the documents on behalf of the Liberation War Museum. It shows that in 1972, in his series of meetings with UN high officials, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto did not reject the idea of trial of those accused of war crimes, but suggested that they should be tried by internationally recognized procedure. Gradually, he shifted his position, it seems with support from China and USA. On 26 October 1972, he told Under Secretary General Roberto Gaia, quote, if they have committed brutalities, as all soldiers do, but such a trial should take place in Pakistan, unquote. Bhutto further argued that it should be imposed upon the Prime Minister of Bangladesh that Nuremberg trials are not the way to gain international support for Bangladesh. By the middle of 1973, Bhutto's position hardened, and in his meeting with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan, he stated that if the trial of 195 Pakistani POWs were to be held, there could be no question of Pakistan recognizing Bangladesh. So the pressure increased on Bangladesh to barter justice for recognition. Bangabandhu never agreed to such a deal, but the country needed UN and Arab recognition as early as possible to lift the country out of economic impoverishment and get UN and related agencies support as an active development partner. The pressure became more acute with the forthcoming Organization of Islamic Countries Conference scheduled to be held in Lahore in February 1974. Bangladesh was invited to join the conference by the OIC Secretariat, and Kuwait and Algeria strongly supported the participation. But Bangabandhu took a strong position to go to Pakistan only after Pakistan duly recognized Bangladesh. Saudi Arabia and other countries tried to get a clemency for the war criminals in exchange of the recognition. But finally, Bangabandhu prevailed and he went to Lahore after the recognition extended to Bangladesh unconditionally by Pakistan. Kamal Hussain, the then foreign minister, wrote in his memoir, quote, many of the leaders took the opportunity to present personal appeals to Bangabandhu to forego the war crimes trial in the intent of carrying forward the reconciliation process. Bangabandhu's reply was, it could only duly take the appeals into account when it will sit down to discuss the matter with Pakistan. That hour came in April 1974 when, after elaborate discussion, Bangladesh, India and Pakistan agreed to the following, quote, the foreign minister of Bangladesh stated that the excesses and manifold crimes committed by these prisoners of war constituted, according to the relevant provisions of the UN General Assembly resolution and international law, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, and that there was universal consensus that persons charged with such crimes as Pakistani prisoners of war should be held to account and subjected to the due process of law. The Minister of State for Defense and Foreign Affairs of the government of Pakistan said that his government condemned and deeply regretted any crimes that may have been committed. The Foreign Minister of Bangladesh stated that the government of Bangladesh had decided not to proceed with the trials as an act of clemency, unquote. The language is diplomatic at its best, but it clearly indicates that the clemency did not absolve the accused of the criminality, but Bangladesh simply has withdrawn itself from the task to hold the trial in the soil of Bangladesh, the place of occurrence. Following the discussion in Delhi, Pakistan revived the Commission of Inquiry on 25th May 1974 with a narrow perspective to look into the circumstances which led to the surrender in East Pakistan. The commission, popularly known as Justice Hamidul Rahman Commission, submitted its report, which never saw the light of the day. Part of the report was leaked out to the press, and it clearly admits the atrocities done by the leading Pakistani generals. On his return from Delhi, after signing the tripartite agreement, Kamal Hussain met Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and he wrote, quote, he, Bangabandhu, was deeply pensive and brooding. Looking up, he said, Bengalis have demonstrated their generosity to the world. We have made the maximum contribution on the opening a chapter in the region. But he added, for me, I am borne down by the thought that this is the first time in my life that I have not been able to fulfill a public commitment. I told our people that the war criminals shall be tried on the soil of Bangladesh. I have not been able to keep my word. Let us hope that this act will bring some good to our people, unquote. We understand the circumstances under which Bangabandhu failed to fulfill his commitment to ensure justice for the victims of genocide. He has given clemency to the 195 POW accused of genocidal act from facing trial in Bangladesh. But that does not mean giving them impunity from facing trial under international law. This remained an unfulfilled task for the humanity. At the same time, Bangladesh can be proud of the domestic tribunal it established for international crimes in 2010 with the popular support as expressed in the 2008 national election. The tribunal has so far adjudicated more than 30 cases and provided satisfaction of justice to the members of the victim's family and the youths of Bangladesh. Thus, Bangladesh has opened a new chapter as a post-genocidal society, building a new life based on truth and justice. This calls for further action and steps to be undertaken to eliminate sources of genocide from our society and all the societies of the world. Unfortunately, we are facing a different reality when dark forces of genocidal brutality raise their head from time to time. The latest outbreak of genocide we have witnessed in the neighboring Myanmar, when the brutal attack against the Rohingya population caused an influx of about 750,000 refugees to Bangladesh. This is a great challenge to Bangladesh, a small and underdeveloped country. But under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh, a victim of genocide in 1971, is standing by another victim of genocide perpetrated in 2017. The legacy of Bangladesh genocide and its quest for justice has earned new importance in this new reality. This year, we are observing the birth centenary of Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and in the coming year, we will observe the 50th anniversary of Bangladesh genocide and its independence. The occasion calls for new action, working in close collaboration with the international community, the academics, researchers, historians of Bangladesh and abroad, has to bring back the genocide, the 1971 genocide, back into the annals of major genocides of the 20th century. It is important to learn the lessons from history and strengthen the global alliance to confront genocide, say never again to genocide. Thank you for your hearing. Now the floor is open and I give it to Naureen to conduct the session.
Thank you so much, sir, for your eloquent lecture. We have a few questions for you. So I may now begin with asking one question, and that is on the Biharis or the Urdu-speaking community in Bangladesh. So the question is, whenever we talk about the perpetrators of 1971, we mention them as part of the Pakistani army or as local collaborators. So why do we never try to bring the Biharis under the International Crimes Tribunal charges, as they had initiated mass atrocities originated from communal crisis?
Should I reply now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You wish to.
I think there is many misunderstanding in the question. First thing is that a whole community can never be blamed, and a whole community is not blamed in any of the International Crimes Act, or even in our ICTBD. You will see that we are not blaming the political party or the religious community or the fundamentalists as a whole, but the charge is against the individuals with the most responsible for the most serious crimes. And the same applies for other local collaborators, where whether they are Bengalis or Biharis, it doesn't matter, but whether the criminal acts has been done by them. And so it is not what Biharis have done, and I think it is very wrong to use such terminology in a gross manner. And also, the whole community is not responsible for the atrocities. It is the part of the community who have been influenced or who have been duped to be part of the Pakistani military junta and their program, and this was their official policy. And the community actually became victim of this official policy, creating division within the people settling in Bangladesh, and also using one group against another. So this is one thing. And second thing is, it is also interesting to note that a particular section of the Urdu-speaking community has declared themselves as stranded Pakistanis, which was a major problem in the post-genocidal period. And they claim that they have migrated to Pakistan, and now with the emergence of Bangladesh, they want to go back to Pakistan. So they have their own logic, and also it is their aspiration. And so they were actually taken to the camps with the understanding that Pakistan will take back. And as I mentioned about the serious negotiation, not only about the POW, but also with the stranded Pakistanis and also with the civilian interns. This was a very complicated but very huge humanitarian issue. Over the years, what happened is a very positive development, that a new generation of Urdu-speaking population who have migrated from India, they consider this land, as their homeland. And since they have grown up here, they have their life, and they were building their life here, and they want to be in harmony with all the communities, groups living in the land. And they made a submission to the High Court, and later the Supreme Court also upheld the verdict that those born after 1971 will be given the citizenship right of Bangladesh. They are now also full citizen with the voting rights. So I think this is a complicated scenario. This is also part of our history. A lot of brutalities were enacted by some leading members of the Urdu-speaking community, and they need to be identified. Those brutalities should be recorded and also highlighted. Many of them actually escaped to Pakistan, and we know many cases, especially in the Mirpur area, those who have been accused of serious crime. Some of them were in prison, but they were later released when the military regime of Ziaur Rahman came to power. And in the under the grab of most distressed person, they have actually picked up those who have been put into trial. They were verdict rendered against them. They were in prison, but they were freed and sent back to Pakistan. So many people does not know all these stories, and it is very important to do a lot of research on various aspects of our history.
We understand that this particular lecture related to Bangabandhu and his struggle to ensure justice to the genocide victims of 1971.
Well, let me say one thing, Naureen. As you said, Bangabandhu was very close with the Urdu-speaking community, especially those who have upheld the secular values. And he has good friends among them. And also in 1969, when there was instigation to create a riot among the Bengalis and the Urdu-speaking population, Bangabandhu rushed actually to Mirpur area and pacified both sides. And also one of the first major poem written after his brutal killing has been written by a Urdu-speaking poet, Naushad Noori. And he wrote a very short poem titled Tungipara, saying that this is the place from where the road initiated, and this is the place where the road ended. And this is a eulogy and tribute that the Urdu-speaking population also have for Bangabandhu and for the struggle of Bangladesh.
Sir, since you have mentioned the assassination of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, so one of the participants here actually questioned that why we are failing to use proper and effective diplomatic channel for bringing those perpetrators who were involved in the Bangabandhu murder to our country. So what was the basic challenges?
This is an ongoing process, and you know that this depends on the bilateral agreement, and also there are countries which have death penalty and which does not actually repatriate those who have been given the death penalty. But there are, so some of them actually were brought back, but there are still major perpetrators are roaming free in different countries. So it is an ongoing struggle, and I think one of the important area where one needs to work is that creating a kind of social awareness, that building bridge with the countries where they have taken shelter, like the Chaudhry Mainuddin, a prime accused of intellectual killing. He has turned himself into a social leader under the religious grab, but his criminality should be exposed in the community. So it is also the responsibility of the new generation, I would say, that to make a campaign and also to show to the world that what kind of heinous crime they are involved with, both for the international crime and also for crime of murder of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
I see Helen has raised her hand. So Helen, do you have any question to the speaker?
Hello, I'm very happy to be with you this evening. It's already quite late, or 1 hour later here in Cambodia, and the rain is falling down. It's the monsoon time here as well. So I wish I were with you in person. I'm afraid the COVID has prevented not only me, but all of your friends, the Liberation War Museum, Center for Study of Genocide and Justice, and others to come to be with you in this year of celebrating the centenary of the birth of Bangabandhu. We would be with you, I assure you, and we are with you with our hearts, even though we may be in other places of the world.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was really very riveted by the discussion and the presentation that Mofidul sir gave us this evening, and I'm hoping that it will be published in a written form, because sometimes it's hard to remember every point. I think this is very, very important, and also perhaps if it's possible, the transcription of the questions and answers would be valuable. What I would say from the Cambodian perspective is that there are so many similarities that we see between what happened in Bangladesh and what happened just a very few years later in Cambodia. As we have discussed before, in our meetings and discussions, and which Mofidul and I are intending perhaps to write a book together
Yeah,
about.
now we have to come and bring that in next year on the 50th
We do.
anniversary. Yeah, we will do it.
We have both sketched some outlines and made some chapters, but there's so much to be written. And even tonight, I thought I knew a lot of the story, but tonight, I have to say, you have given detail that I certainly did not know and feel is really important to the story. So the parallels between the situations and the analysis of what happened from an international political perspective, I think is a task for all of us for the future. I don't have a specific question. I just want to say that we should all work further towards this. And I hope to be with you next year for the anniversary of the Liberation War.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank
we are working together, and we have more in our hand, and we will definitely move forward together.
So we have another question, sir, and that is your impression on the 195 Pakistani war criminals. So are you hopeful for the prosecution of these war criminals in near future?
Well, formal trial may take time, may be impossible, may be hard to achieve, but there are other ways, and Helen also can throw light on this, that like the PPT, there are other ways that the global community is now actually addressing the issues which has been neglected by the international community or by the formal justice system. So we are hopeful, and we are discussing this, and we think that we have to build up a very strong solidarity movement, very strong campaign globally supported by evidences, hard facts, researches. And so I think this is a very, very important task. It is not just that one group or one man will move forward and do this. So we think that, as I said, the 50th anniversary and the birth centenary of Bangabandhu and 50th anniversary of independence of Bangladesh is very important occasion for us. Now these two occasions will mingle together in the next year. So this is, I think, another big challenge, that what Bangladesh can do, because we have to do our own homework. We have to prepare our own dossier. We have to prepare our own indictment for each and every of the accused, and we cannot let them enjoy impunity, even they have imposed the clemency on us. So it is clemency and impunity. So let's move forward with the issue of justice. And I think it is never too late, as Helen has given one lecture in our old museum at Shagun Bagicha, that justice delayed does not mean justice denied. So let us struggle, continue our struggle for establishment of truth and justice.
Sir, we have Julian Francis with us, and he actually commented on one of the issues, and that is regarding Chaudhry Moinuddin. Bangladesh government should much more strongly negotiate with British government to bring him back to Bangladesh for life imprisonment on account of British government will not send him back if he is executed. Much more diplomacy is needed in this regard. So this was the comment from Julian Francis.
Very sensitive issue that it is, I think, legally very difficult to make a commitment that the death sentence will not be executed in this particular case. And also that also touch very deeply the hearts and minds of the victims, which is very important issue, that providing justice to the victims of genocide. So I think this issue can be discussed, maybe not in the public forum as such, but within the close community, and look for every option, because ultimately it is the issue of justice that is very important, and also the implementation of the verdict. So I think we do not close any option, but we explore all possibilities.
So, sir, in terms of dealing with the International Crimes Tribunal cases and investigations, we have already witnessed some of the sexual violence victims coming up and giving their testimonies. So one of the participants actually wanted to ask whether the abortions during that time in post-conflict post-conflict scenario, the Biranganas were given consent in terms of the abortion system that the government provided at that time.
Yes, and this was provided with all due sensibilities, and this was the freedom of choice that was given actually to the victim, and so there was no denial of that, and also Mother Teresa also came immediately after the independence, and he was. We know that they were. She was pro-life, and so they actually all these adoption center, the homes that she established for the children of the victims of sexual violence. But ultimately, the choice depends on the person herself, and this was definitely the choice was given to them. And these are actually two significant steps that the government has taken, which is you will find that in almost all other cases of mass atrocity crimes, the women suffer most, and also women did not get recognized for their suffering. This happened after the Second World War also, and especially with it took almost 50 years for the German women who have suffered violence at the hand of impending army, and they were on the wrong side of history, and they could not come up with their story. So these are really very sensitive area, but Bangladesh is also one of the pioneer country, and Bangabandhu personally embraced them and went to their place, and also had many of them carry fond memory of how they came in contact with Bangabandhu and find a new lease of life. So I think one has to understand Bangabandhu's role not as just as a steps that he has taken, but especially the empathy he had for the suffering people and especially for the victim women. So there are many lessons we have to learn from history and from the role of Bangabandhu in ensuring justice, not only in a formal way also, but in many other informal ways. So the suffering of the victims of sexual violence are really a great suffering, but that also calls for their inclusiveness and embracing them into the society. A lot of them are still are the marginalized women. So it is the responsibility of the young generation that I want to say time and again, that to go to them, to embrace them, to be with them, to share your feelings and their feelings with you. So these are really great opportunities you have to rebuild the life of the victims and also life of the nation.
Sir, we are almost at the end of our lecture. So the last question for you is about the victim support mechanism to the tribunal, the ongoing tribunal. So what are your impression regarding the victim and witness support mechanism to the ICTBD in near future?
Well, I call our tribunal the poor people's tribunal. It is functioning under extreme resource constraint, but it has the strength of truth and moral strength. And I think that helped the tribunal a lot. And also in the issue of victim support, witness protection, we could not follow the international standard or norms that is in practice in other tribunals, which have much more facilities and options. But even then, it was really admirable to see the witness on the stand, how they came forward, how they made their submission, and what inspiration and strength also they got from the justice process. I think that's a very important aspect of the theoretically we are not in a good place to ensure this, but in practical terms, in terms of our history, in terms of people's participation in the whole struggle, in terms of the new generation's involvement with the trial process, we have a strength. I think that strength has ensured that we could face these challenges and also many ups and downs in the trial process, and ultimately truth has prevailed. So thanks to the victims, thanks to the witnesses. We owe a lot to the witness. I think Cambodia has set an example with the Witness Protection Center and also the archiving and also highlighting their role. And maybe we can think of something like that. And that is also very much part of the memorialization process and also part of the justice process. So the question is very interesting. We failed to do many things, but we can regroup ourselves and also address the issue from a new perspective and also taking help from other countries' experience, especially Cambodia is a neighboring country with many kind of similarities. And we need to do more on the victims, on the witness, and especially for their role in ensuring justice. It is really, really very commendable, and a lot of stories are there, but we need to share and we need to also recognize them for their contribution.
Thank you so much, sir, for your lecture. And also I thank the audience from home and abroad who joined us to this lecture, and also to the participants of this online certificate course. So I end with this, and with the spirit, we hope to see you again in any of our upcoming events or lectures. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.